Thank you for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is made possible by viewer and listener support. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting it at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. White Centipede Noise is a label and mail order based in Germany, releasing top quality noise on tape, CD, and vinyl. White Centipede Noise is also the premier EU-based distributor of international noise. Visit whitecentipedeNoise.com to see available label releases and weekly distro updates. Hello and welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast. My name is Oscar Brummel. Today joining me is a legend and veteran in extreme music. He is known as an extremely fast drummer before his days as a harsh noise machine. Please welcome Jon Engman of CUSTODIAN.
Hey guys.
John?
Hey Oscar.
How you doing?
Good. Happy to be here. Happy to talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. So just as a backstory to everyone listening, about a year and a half ago, I had the idea to start a White Centipede Noise zine. And I wanted to do written interviews transcribed from audio interviews. So I set up a bunch of interviews with people on FaceTime. So we would have an interview and talk, and then I was going to transcribe it in order to cut down on the back and forth of email interviews and kind of get a more natural flow. Jon was my first guest because he's a longtime friend. He was one of the first artists I released on White Centipede Noise. We used to hang out and see each other a lot, when I got into noise and started the label. So he was obviously my first choice. We connected after several years of not having contact with each other and had a really, really awesome interview on FaceTime. It ran like 3 hours.
Yeah, it was long.
It was long. I mean, we chopped it up about like a lot of stuff, but it was a really long, great interview about, hopefully stuff we're going to be able to recreate and re-examine. But so when I finished the interview, it's my first interview, I looked at my phone. A couple days later, I went to go play it back. Oh, fuck, I got a great interview. Went and played it back, and I had not recorded any of the audio. I had to sing completely wrong. I had the microphone not turned on. It wasn't the default, and I hadn't tested it out beforehand. So I lost the entire interview. And yeah, I told a friend about it, and he described it as he said that's a special kind of hell. And it really was this feeling of just biffing something so hard and having the video in front of me where his mouth is moving and just knowing that the information doesn't exist anymore. So when I started the podcast, Jon was obviously one of the first people I wanted to interview for this. Took us a little while to get scheduled, but here we are. So I'm really happy to have you here, Jon. I'm going to try to, remember some of the things we talked about. You gave me some awesome stories and information that was unexpected to me when we first talked. So hopefully we can dig that up again. But so,
well, I talk a lot, so I'm sure I'll cover the same ground.
It's great. It's great. And I stammer a lot and I stutter a lot. So it's good when I have people that know how to take over a little bit and extrapolate what I'm trying to get at from my questions. So as I mentioned, you are a veteran in extreme music, and you are a legend. You have been playing drums in a lot of brutal death metal bands going back. I'm not so sure how far, but since the early 2000s, late 90s, you're known as one of the fastest drummers ever. Like really, when I go on YouTube and find videos of you, or like find stuff on forums, people are like, you know, waxing poetic about your drumming. You know, people from all over the world. You played in BRODEQUIN. I'm really kind of
BRODEQUIN. You know, people say it different, but you know, like Jamie, the bass player, he'll say BRODEQUIN, but I'm kind of like, well, BRODEQUIN, but you know, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever. You know, it's we know what you're talking about.
So, BRODEQUIN was like the one of the main like bands that you were in for a long time. You were in a lot of bands. So, can you first of all give us a little bit of background to your like history as a death metal drummer?
Well, I kind of actually started more in the, I mean, I started playing drums early. I was like 12, or I think I got my first drum set when I was 13. But I'd been kind of already playing before that, not obviously on drum sets. I mean, just at school for, you know, because I was the band geek. You know, I was in all the, you know, symphonic band and orchestra and marching band and all that crap. But yeah, I mean, I played in a variety of bands. You know, my first band was a death metal band. But you know, I got really heavy into black metal, and actually the first, you know, the first band that I actually like did anything with in terms of like, you know, recording stuff and going out of state playing was a band that was at the time called Dead by Morning, but then we changed the name to The Cold Beyond. And I did that for a few years, you know, played Milwaukee Metal Fest, played New Jersey Metal Fest, and I was like, I don't know, 17 or something.
Cool.
But, you know, I started Fetopsy in, or Photopsy, again, depending on how you want to say it. And I think I started that in like end of 99, 2000. I mean, there was all sorts of little projects.
Sure.
Sparsed in between, you know, age 14 and, you know, 20, you know, little one-off things with friends and whatever. But yeah, I mean, kind of like Fetopsy was kind of the band that kind of got me the attention that ended up, you know, that's when I joined BRODEQUIN. But it's really weird because a lot of people say, you know, they know me as a brutal death metal drummer, but, you know, I was like a black metal and like grindcore drummer, you know, and and the difference to me being I never really played a lot of like death metal is known for like constant kick drum runs. And I was more like, well, I just want to play constant blast beats. You know, I was a grind and black metal guy, like, you know, Dark Funeral, Ethereal, stuff like that, where it's just like fucking blast for 5 minutes and that's all you do. So when I joined BRODEQUIN, I mean, there was some like slammy, brutal death metal isms of Fetopsy, where I would do like, you know, your kick drum rolls and stuff. But when I agreed to join BRODEQUIN, you know, I hit send on the email to say, yeah, I'll try out, you know, I want to do this. I was like, well, holy shit, I have to learn how to play death metal kick drums now, you know, because that's just not anything I did. So it's funny when people, you know, it's funny to me anyway, because I don't see myself as a brutal death metal drummer. I see myself as like a grindcore black metal drummer. I mean, I don't play drums anymore, of course, but yeah, it's just funny. Oh, the fastest death metal drummer. It's like, well, I really kind of just faked my way through death metal.
But you were a fast-ass drummer, I mean, before then. I mean, you just kind of changed the style a bit, but you were, I mean, if BRODEQUIN reached out to you, you must have been fast as fuck at that time too. I mean, like.
Well, you know, I met Mike at Ohio Death Fest. That's a guitar player. I met him, I think it was 2001, you know, and I had given him the Fetopsy demo, and then I had a couple of copies of the Cold Beyond, my black metal band. I had a couple cassette copies, and there's a kind of a fun story with that, but I won't go like super into it. Anyway, at the time, everyone in the brutal death metal scene hated black metal. Like, there were shirts, Corpse Gristle Records out of Texas, they were selling shirts at that festival that had the Corpse Gristle logo, and on the back it said "No Gay Black Metal." And I thought that was funny because when I heard, if you know anything about BRODEQUIN, they have the whole like medieval torture kind of aesthetic and a different style of artwork than most brutal death metal bands. And actually a friend of mine, Jesse, who is the singer for Fetopsy, he was like, oh, you got to check out this band. They kind of have this like weird black metal vibe, even though they're like a guttural death metal band. And I was like, oh, sick. So I heard it and I was like, yeah, this is just like low tuned black metal with, gurgle vocals. I was like, perfect. I totally get into this. Well, then BRODEQUIN plays that year, replacing another band. They weren't even on the bill, so I was excited. I was like, yeah, cool, BRODEQUIN's playing. And I had this in the back of my mind, yeah, they're kind of have a black metal thing going on. So sure enough, they get on stage and Mike, the guitar player, has a Mayhem sticker on his guitar. And I'm like, sweet. So after they played, I talked to him, and then I felt confident, like, oh, here's my black metal demo too. You'll fucking dig this. And that's kind of what got me the BRODEQUIN thing, because I just, it was like, oh, cool, you like black metal too. So it's funny because black metal was sort of the catalyst of me getting into, the whole BRODEQUIN scenario, and then consequentially into the death metal scene.
And you were pretty like active with them for those years that you were in the band. Like you did a lot of touring and recorded a few albums, right?
Actually, we only did one official tour. Well, two. No, we did Canada and we did the States with Sublime Cadaveric Decomposition. But there was a lot of holes in that tour, shows that didn't go through.
Okay.
We had some van problems that, we had to drop off a few shows and then meet back up with the tour.
Yeah, normal.
But mostly we did festivals.
Okay.
And I recorded a 2-song EP with them, 1 full length. And then at the same time, we were doing Liturgy, which was like BRODEQUIN offshoot with Maddie Way from Disgorge,
okay,
also on vocals. So that was kind of a side project. But that happened in that same period. But really, I was only in the band for about 2 years.
Okay.
And then after that, I went back to Fetopsy for a while. But, and then that's where, the harsh noise thing happened as a direct result of me moving to Tennessee to join BRODEQUIN, actually.
Okay. Tell us about that. That's my question. That's my next question anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'd always been into noise, really. Like as soon as I took that step into, Relapse Records world and black metal, really, because, I mean, honestly, my first exposure to what would be the bridge to noise was, Mortiz. Mm-hmm. He was the bass player of Emperor, and then he did the dungeon synth, as they call it now.
Yeah.
And, and that was my introduction to Cold Meat Industry. And cool. Also there was, one thing I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last, the botched interview, we'll call it.
Yeah.
There was that magazine, the guy from Sun, Stephen O'Malley. He did that Descent magazine for many years.
Right.
And that was all black metal, but, they had like Smell and Quim and Taint, sure. Atrax Morgue, Brighter Death Now. I'm sure there's others, other Cold Meat Industry. I think they did like an Arcana interview, if I remember correctly, but there was all sorts of crossover there. And even in the reviews, there was, power electronics and noise.
Cool. And
then, also being, into the grindcore and death metal stuff, you had that was the split of, Relapse and Release records, that, like, everyone has Pulse Demon,
right?
That was that right. era. Pulse Demon, Sickness Report,
yep.
Atrax Morgue,
yep.
And also, I know I didn't mention this in the last interview. I was thinking a lot about it, and another big push for me at the time, as far as like me getting real interested in noise, was Through Silver and Blood from Neurosis.
Okay.
And they put out, at the same time, they put out that Silver Blood Transmissions, Tribes of Neurot CD. And that all kind of was coalescing for me at the time. So it was like this whole, black metal, death metal, grindcore, harsh noise, dark ambient was all just kind of like all at the same time.
Cool. That's awesome.
But that was like all like, I want to say that's 95.
Okay, so that far back.
Yeah.
So you've been a fan basically since then.
Yeah.
And when I see videos on YouTube, like there's that music video, I think of you playing with BRODEQUIN, you're wearing like a slogan T-shirt. I think, is that correct? You've been
Yeah, you always
rapping like harsh noise stuff, like in those, like when I see old videos of you at shows, you like Masada T-shirts and shit like that.
Yeah. Well, so the story with that was, obviously I was wearing the shirts because I liked those bands, but so I was, at the time I was working for Unmatched Brutality, playing drums for BRODEQUIN. Had a few, I worked through a temp agency as well. It was kind of, because I'd have to leave for shows. And so I'd just be like, oh, well, I need a new job in 2 weeks. I'll be back. You know what I mean? I just was working through a temp agency. But, Mike and Jamie wanted to start a sub-label for Unmatched Brutality.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Unmatched Brutality real quick before you go on? Because I think a lot of people probably don't know what that is.
So that was the record label that the Baileys, the Mike and Jamie from BRODEQUIN, they started a record label to basically put out BRODEQUIN records. Mm-hmm. And then they started signing other bands, and started a distro, and that was kind of the, that's what allowed us to do a lot of things with BRODEQUIN, because, eBay at the time we were selling a ton on eBay, and, the early 2000s, that was like heyday for brutal death metal.
Yeah.
Now everything is, I'm so out of touch right now with pretty much everything in that scene and mostly every other scene. But that's when everything was just kind of coming out. It was super exciting.
Yeah.
All the stuff that's now influential was all coming out at that time.
Right.
That's kind of when all the like Eastern European gore grind was starting to get, your cock and ball torture, reinfection, all that stuff that's now kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard that band, Gutalax. Or Gutalax or whatever. They wear the like hazmat shirts and have like porta johns on stage. It was like kind of the beginning of that whole like obscene extreme like costume culture.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was going on. All the brutal death metal was going on. So it was really exciting.
Cool.
This episode of White Centipede Noise Podcast is brought to you by Skeleton Dust Records. Located in downtown Dayton, Ohio, Skeleton Dust Records has offered noise, experimental, and other underground music and beyond for the discerning listener since 2017. Stay tuned for new releases from Dayton noise artists Final Machine and Exclusion Zone, plus an essential reissue of Cosmic Noise from Japanese noise pioneer and Incapacitance member Fumio Kosakai.
So you were working for their mail order. You were working for their label.
Yeah.
And then so when I broke you off, you said they had started a sub-label or something like that?
Yeah, they wanted to start a sub-label, side label, kind of like a different division, and the original plan was black metal label, because obviously Mike and I were, but I had contacted a few bands and just had zero response.
Okay.
I think I know for certain I contacted Dark and Nocturne Slaughter Cult and a couple of other bands, but that's the only one I really remember. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so there was no response because whatever,
Sure.
At the time there was kind of like a mutual hatred between black metal and death metal bands, just stupid scene shit, I guess. But yeah, so being down in Tennessee, I moved down there for playing with that band. So I didn't have many friends, I didn't have much to do if BRODEQUIN wasn't doing anything.
Sure.
So that's when I started buying gear to make harsh noise. And, harshnoise.com was around.
Yeah.
So I was, burning CDRs off of that, and, also, that was kind of the peak interest for me at that time. So when I had downtime, which was all the time, I was experimenting with gear to make noise.
Cool.
So how that ties into I know I'm kind of like not focused right now.
No, it's great. That's
how that kind of tied into the sub label of BRODEQUIN is like, okay, we're not getting any response from black metal fans. And I can't recall the year, but there was that show in Brooklyn where it was Grunt, Taint, Slogan, Bloody Minded, Control, Death Pile, that whole fucking crazy show.
Yeah.
So I went up there, I drove up there by myself from Tennessee.
Wow.
I had like $150, no spare tire. I just totally went on a whim. It was super, I think about it now, I'm like, God, that was so stupid. But, so I get to the show and I was just like, oh, well, this sub-label thing was in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And just like, I didn't even really think about it. I just like went up to Jonathan, after the Death Pile set. And I was like, what would you think of like a Death Pile CD? And that's kind of how like I got really involved.
Yeah.
Because he was like, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Had you known him before at all? Had you been in touch with him at all?
No, I never had talked to him. He didn't know who I was. GR had just come out, but I was a fan of his from, Dead World and Blunt Force Trauma.
Yeah.
Which I still love that CD.
Yeah.
It's, to me, kind of the precursor to like the Wall madness of the early Wall scene. That was really a dense record.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of how and then that turned into Pain Compliance, and did some cassettes and did the Steelhook Prosthesis first CD.
Yeah.
First official CD.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just so weird. The whole process was so bizarre.
Yeah.
That it just.
But that you came to it as almost as a business, like you were.
Yeah, in a weird way. Yeah.
I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but you were working for this label, and it was we want to start a sub label, and then the one thing didn't work out as planned. And then you approach as a fan, you approach this person as a fan, as also as someone who runs helps run a label.
Yeah.
So that birthed Pain Compliance Productions. But did that really exist as a sub label of the BRODEQUIN's label, or was that kind of your own thing at that point?
Well, no, so it was going to be, and then I left BRODEQUIN.
Okay.
But now I had this handshake that I was going to stand by. Because after Jonathan agreed to do a Death Pile release of some sort, then I was Steelhook Prosthesis was just kind of being, coming out. Really, it was they had I don't know, a 3-inch on Gray's label or something. And I obviously loved it. So I contacted them because they were like, oh, cool, a new act that no one's really touched yet.
Yeah.
Let's offer them a full length CD because,
cool.
Because I was also thinking, at the time before it turned into what was, my own label detached from Unmatched Brutality. That's kind of why I was thinking Death Pile and Steelhook Prosthesis, because they kind of have a crossover appeal to a death metal scene, just how I felt about Atrax Morgue Sickness Report. I was like, oh, this is like Carcass, kind of, it's all the medical shit.
Yeah.
So to me, that was a good kind of crossover because, I had all the Carcass records. And Disgorge Mexico with all the pathological grind stuff. So I was like, oh, this would be a cool crossover because you got the Death Pile, which is all violent and nasty.
Yes.
And then, the steel hook prosthesis, they have this like medical theme. I was like, oh, this is a good crossover for, metal dudes.
Yes. And that's Death Pile Final Confession for those who don't know. That's like the, pretty, I think, standard staple, like now collection CD of Death Pile stuff.
Hopefully.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
I made enough of them, so I hope.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think they're still quite available, and that was like the time where you made a CD, and it was like a CD was built to last. A CD was built to be there for like, a long ass time, because you couldn't press like 300 or 200. You had to press like fiber.
Yeah, you had to press 500 or 1,000, and it made more sense to press 1,000 because it was cheaper than 500.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're still out there for sure. So yeah, and also so you mentioned the crossover of like Steelhook prosthesis. They're also from the South, aren't they? Like,
yeah, they're from Texas.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, okay. Because you were living in Tennessee, I thought maybe that had something to do with it, but no, probably not. Okay, so cool. So that's pretty unique kind of path to starting a label. Whereas most people, it starts out with like they're doing noise and they want a platform to release their own stuff. You ran it for a while, but I think only 2 years, right? 2 years.
Yeah, it was pretty short-lived.
Yeah.
I tend to be someone that goes too hard on things and burns out quick.
Yeah.
I'm a dabbler in many things.
Yeah.
And I get super into it, and then I just I burn myself out on it.
That's interesting.
And there was other reasons, of course, for not, wanting to continue the label.
Yeah.
Financially, time-wise, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's all contributing factors,
Sure.
as anyone can assume, I'm sure, when talking about a label.
Of course.
But yeah, it's, I kind of try to master stuff within 2 or 3 years, and I'm just like,
then you've done it. Yeah. And you do. I mean, we're going to get into Custodian, but I was talking to Pat Yankee recently, and
hey Pat.
Yeah, it was actually after our interview, kind of in the same situation where we were done, and we were talking. I told him I was interviewing you soon. He was like, oh cool. I told him I say hi and everything. And we were talking about your run as Custodian, and I don't want to get too much on that right now because we're going to do that later. But he was like, Jon was like a supernova. He like appeared on the scene like all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere. He fucking like killed it for a few years. Like just dominated the harsh noise scene in a live setting, at least. Like like live shows. Anyone who saw you was like, fuck, and it was like you was really buzzing, like just on this natural buzz of like your live performances and your crushing sound. And then you like kind of like you burned out. You were like a star that got too hot and like just like was like you disappeared and you're like, I'm done with this. And I think that's interesting that you say that, because I think that makes sense. Going back.
Well, also I Custodian was pretty. It was very distilled.
Yeah.
And I really didn't give myself. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, and it's like, in my eyes, I made the same track every time I recorded. I was just like trying to make it better and more how I wanted it to sound. I never tried to diversify. I just kept funneling to that point. And then when I got there, I was kind of like, well, now what do I do?
Sure.
Can't really do anything else. If I do anything else, it's not going to be this.
Yeah.
This episode of White Centipede Noise Podcast is brought to you by Fusty Cunt, piece of garbage label run by a piece of garbage human. 3 new LPs available now: Interracial Sex and Bacillus, The Tropics, Vindictive Zoonosis, wherein your civilization encroaches the realm of 2 filth-trodden animals, Sarin Snow, Mighty Blood, U.S. Power Electronics as a meditation on order, tradition, and the extremes of nature. Al's Deterge, Untitled, 7 years in the making, slow cut at 45 RPM, over 1,000 edits in 30 minutes. An end is never in sight as it keeps devouring itself. Stay tuned next year for the long-awaited David Gilden retrospective box set on CD and limited cassette.
Well, we're gonna get to Custodian in just 1 minute, but I want to ask you quick. How was that? How was that show in Brooklyn? That's a pretty legendary power electronics show and lineup. Like, what? Tell me about that.
It was amazing. It was amazing because honestly, I think that may have been. Well, no, I take that back. The first noise performance I ever saw was Bloody Minded. I saw them in Milwaukee opening up for Wump Scut and Suicide Commando or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. There was an odd lineup and there was like 6 people there. It was, but that's where I met Mark, and that's where I got the Blunt Force Trauma CD.
Okay.
Because I talked to him after, and he obviously had his distro.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, there wasn't a scene in Milwaukee, and I was, pretty unaware of what was going on, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that was like my first like legit, noise power electronics show. And that's when I was, just finding, I had just heard Control like 2 weeks before I went to the show. But yeah, the show was crazy. Like I said, I drove up by myself. I was going to go, and then I'm not going to go, and then I was going to go, and then I was not going to go, and then I ended up going.
Cool.
Just kind of called my sister on the way there. I was like, just in case I disappear, I'm driving up to Brooklyn, and I have like $150 and no spare tire, which is like details that I can't forget, because it was just like, I got like halfway through the drive, and then when I realized like, I might not have enough gas money to get home, like, whoops. But no, it was cool. It was cool.
Did you connect with anyone
it
else?
really sucked. Grunt played for like, I don't know, 35 seconds.
Right.
Because the cops came and they're like, shut it down.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll shut it down. And then, Miko started again. And I guess they probably just like drove around the block to see if anyone was like actually listened.
Yeah.
And then it got like super shut down.
Okay.
But, Control was amazing.
Yeah.
Taint was amazing.
Yeah. You're probably one of
it was
few people who you're probably one of the few people that have actually seen Taint perform live. I mean, he only did a few shows, I think, ever.
Yeah.
I know, and they were, definitely special events.
Yeah, and he had such a small setup. And it was just like, he had Sean from Moribund. What was his pedal in electronics?
Circuit electronics, right?
Yeah. He had one of the like noise generator, one of Sean's noise generators. And it was just like a silver box with one on-off switch. And I don't know what he had that thing running into, but the set started kind of, with a little bit of, atmosphere. It wasn't just like bludgeoning right off the bat. It was a build up, and then he hit that fucking switch on that generator, and it was just like, I wish I knew what pedal he was running that fucking generator through, because that was, I remember just like being crushed by that moment. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, it was so good.
Do you think that seeing that performance was informative to Custodian? Because with Custodian, you played with like max 2 pedals at all time. You had your setup on a little, bar stool usually, and you had like 2 pedals and like 1 source usually, right? And just this crushing, really diverse dynamic sound that you squeezed out of this minimal amount of gear. Do you think that was like informative, or was that something that just appealed to you already?
Well, I always liked minimal. I mean, my drum set was always really small, to the point where I'd get made fun of, like I'd play a show and be nice Muppet kit or whatever. And I'd be like, okay, well,
watch this.
Fine, but watch. Yeah. You'll change your mind. I can use this thing.
Yeah.
Not to sound like an arrogant shithead or something.
No, that's true.
But yeah, I always liked minimal stuff. I mean, that kind of goes even back to like watching old Devo videos, because that was like my first favorite band ever.
Cool.
You know, and they always had such weird, as a child and as not a musician, you don't really understand, like, okay, the drummer is standing there and he has 4 rubber pads and a cymbal. Hearing this drum, like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I didn't understand synthesizers.
Yeah.
I didn't, you know. So that was always intriguing to me. But yeah, definitely the Taint set was like, wow. And then, you know, seeing videos of like Masana too,
Right.
where it's just like the guy's just 3 pedals and a microphone.
Yeah.
You know, or like even that like Hannah Tarash video,
Right.
where it's just like I with the microphone in his mouth, you know, gyrating and yelling.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, the whole minimal setup was always very appealing to me on multiple levels, really.
And what was your like standard setup during that time?
Well, I did a few shows before I kind of like figured it out, because, you know, you realize real quick that what you're doing in your bedroom doesn't help or doesn't work live. You know, if you're using open source microphones or contact mics or, you know, but yeah, once I figured out like the, a way to recreate the sound that I was doing at home. So I had like a recording setup, and then I had my live setup. Well, no, let me take that back. I had a setup that was kind of like, you know, because I worked with a multi-effects unit that I just used for the looping on it and ability to layer. But all my sounds were pre-recorded in a loop station pedal, the RC2 Boss, the red RC2, the original. And then, you know, it has like, I don't know, I have one sitting right here, actually. Let me, it has 11 locations for loops. And I think it's got like 15-minute internal recording capability. So what I would do is, you know, on, let's say the even numbers, I would record like really like a minute each per location of like really abrasive, like high end, you know, feedback metal scrapes, you know, like your real piercing, like Masana influenced shit. And then I had, on the odd locations, let's say, you know, I did have it stepped. It was alternating low, high, low, high, low. So I'd have like, you know, and then I'd have like crunchy or wall type of stuff and real brittle, broken type of stuff. And then I would kind of just like improv through those settings to give myself a lot of variety, with just that little pedal. And then I would cut loops on the Korg, PX4 or 5 or whatever model. And then I would just layer it. I would manipulate the volumes so I could stack layers but live.
You're capturing live layers from that loop station. Live loops, I mean. Yeah.
And, you know, I was, for example, if I was, you know, going to cut into a new loop, even if I went to the same location, I would just keep the volume down and let the loop start and play for, you know, 10 or 15 seconds. So I started a new loop with that same setting, but it's not something that you had already heard in the set.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, so I was able to like turn things, you know, kind of mix things up a bit with just, you know, because I wanted to do more, you know, live. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, pre-recorded stuff, or, you know, at the time there was all the hatred for laptops and, you know, so it was like, well, I want to do stuff live, but it sounds like shit. Like the microphone's too hot. There's, you know, I just get feedback. I can't get any low end, you know, so I'd make all my stuff that I loaded into the loop station. I'd make all that at home with a different setup.
Yeah. And dial.
And then when I recorded or played live, that's when I used the real truncated setup with just the loop station and the PX4.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing those first sets. I think I saw some of your first ever sets. Maybe not the first ever, but
God, they were so bad.
No, they weren't, man. I know maybe they weren't as controlled as you would like, but you were using that. I think it was like a lapel mic.
Yeah, right? I had the lapel mic in my mouth.
Yeah, that's right. Those were fucking killer. I mean, that's what I actually like. That's what comes to mind, like in a big way when I think of some of those, like seeing you live. So I mean, I thought those sets were amazing, and they got great response from the room for sure. I mean, on a loud ass PA, you can't go wrong. You killed it too.
Thank you. Some of those I remember the one Noise Fest. It was like the second Milwaukee Noise Fest or something, and it was just like the most awful. I actually like stopped and keep going, and I'm like, fine, I'll try again, but it was awful. I had a few before I got into the loop station and PX4. The only set that I really, because I was using like a shaker and a kill switch for a while, like the first handful of shows, and the only two sets that I remember being like pretty happy with was the Heavy Focus set was super fun because it was just like, is this a fight or is it a is it a noise set? It was pretty chaotic. And then I remember the St. Louis Noise Fest being a pretty decent set too. Cool. That was the shaker. That's before I had the, what became known as the like custodian setup.
Sure. Cool. Coming soon on White Centipede Noise, Apripot, Hot Lava Shampoo CD. Yeah, you mentioned like you like to use the loops. You had it really structured, like lows and highs. Do you think your experience as a drummer or in like traditional bands kind of informed how you approach the sound with Custodian?
I would guess, yeah. I mean, I don't think that was like a conscious thing to do. But I always, I like loops a lot. In terms of like listening to music too. Yeah. I like a good repetitive crushing sound, be it, a good riff or a good noise loop or something. There's just something hypnotic about it that, I don't know many people that don't like loops.
Sure.
It's a very good pattern.
Yeah. It's very intrinsic. Like it resonates somehow, I think, with the human brain.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure I know if anything, cutting live loops and interlocking stuff, I mean, that definitely my drumming background definitely helped that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I did that because of my, background in, rhythmic performances or whatever, drumming, whatever you want to, define it as. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped me achieve what I wanted to do when I kind of latched onto like, okay, this is the direction I'm going.
Yeah. And I bet, just having this musical ear and this musical feeling, I think, even subconsciously probably really informed how you arranged your sounds and arranged your tracks. And like, you have your lows and your highs, and you have like a lot of your recordings, a lot of your albums have short tracks. Like they're made up of, several like 4 or 5 minute tracks, right? I mean, they're also almost like song style.
Yeah. I mean, I like listening to one long track. I used to have a lot more attention span for that. As I get older, I guess it depends on what it is. Like if it's a real, if it's something calm and dark ambient, I can listen to something for 20, 25, 30 minutes. But, I get to a point now where like, I don't really keep up with a lot of things, but I do, my ears, I'm always on Bandcamp looking at new things and, of all, tons of different stuff,
Sure.
In terms of genre.
Yeah.
But, I get to a track and it's like, I see a track that's 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, and I start listening to it and I like it.
Yeah.
But then it's like 7 minutes in and I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
I get bored. Not really bored because I'll like it, but it's like, my mind wants something else.
I can relate to that. I think that depends a lot also on like the listening situation. Like, when you're at the computer, like, and you're checking stuff out like on the internet, like I have much less attention span. Like I'll put something on and be like, this is cool. But then like, it's really easy to be like, well, okay, I can listen to like this next thing now, like instead. So I'll turn it off and kind of switch it over. But like if I put on a tape, maybe just because it's like physically, I have to bend down to get to it or something like that. It's like,
I like long tracks because I'm lazy and I don't want to get up and flip it.
Like, I'll let it play till it's over, and then like yeah.
No, that makes sense. Well, like I'm obsessive cleaner of my house.
Okay.
Like one of my favorite things to do is vacuum. I don't know why, I just love it. But like if I'm like dusting the house or whatever, I'll put on something and it can play for 45 minutes and I'm like, it's cool. But I do a lot of my like kind of not searching for new stuff, but because I'm not really, I'm still a fan of music, but I'm not like so nuts like I used to be with it. Like always have to hear something, the new thing from this project, or I'm a window shopper of music now.
Okay.
So I go through a lot of things on Bandcamp, and I do a lot of my music listening at work.
Okay, cool.
Because I can wear headphones and it's awesome.
Nice.
But I have a manufacturing job, so it's not like the most mentally stimulating.
Sure.
So I can kind of relate wanting to hear short, exciting pieces while I'm bored.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing over and over again all day.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why when I'm, because when I'm at home and I put on music, I don't know how to say this without sounding weird, but I'm almost like not listening to music. Yeah. I'm at home and I put on music. I'm putting on music.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
At work, I'm listening to music.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's
what you...
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I totally get that. And that's an interesting point you just touched upon with your job is that during custodian, you were actually working as a custodian, which, is the root of the name, of course. How did that job
the name kind of
project?
What was that?
How did that job inform the project? Like,
Oh, well, I mean, I was third shift in a grungy parking garage in downtown Milwaukee. I mean, so it was kind of, I don't know.
Weren't you recording a lot, like at work or something like that? I remember you told me that.
Yeah, I would bring my gear to work. Yeah. Because there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
If there's no events downtown, then there's nothing really to clean.
Yeah.
You just got to do your security walks, and the rest of the night is like, whatever, take a nap, work on noise.
Yeah.
I'd bring my guitar sometimes. Sometimes I'd bring a drum machine. Sometimes I'd bring my, my noise shit.
Cool.
My pedals, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know really. I know that I got a lot of pictures at the building that I ended up using for artwork for Custodian, like the cover of Stefan's tape on New Forces. That was a detached, announcement speaker in our building, or the cover of the split LP with Mania.
Yeah.
I took that there's like I don't know if it was blood or shit, but there was this like perfect handprint on the wall that was kind of smeared down. So then I just centered my shadow at where the hand was, like where my face would be, and that was the cover. So I did pull photos from the building that I used for artwork.
Yeah. But it's cool because it's like the same kind of experience, I guess. I mean, I assume your job, it sounds like your job now is like not as nearly as gnarly and fucked up as being custodian, but like still having this like work environment where it's like you're in a mundane, like, I don't know, like repetitive, unstimulating environment, and using this experience to like tap into, your creativity and tap into your creation, or even if it's just listening to music. Like I think that's a great thing. That's a great use for this kind of time, because I mean that time can be really soul crushing, I think, but that time can also be like a really good opportunity to like almost meditate, or like
it's a good time to learn.
It's like you can have like free time in your mind if you like use your work time in the right way, depending on the kind of job you have.
It's a good time to learn too. I listen to tons. I would say more than I listen to music at work, I listen to documentaries. Because why not? I mean, I love history. I love, hearing or listening to, even just listening to a movie with director commentary if I can find one. Stuff like that. I mean, I enjoy information of all sorts. And I've spent so much time of my life being so dedicated to music.
Yeah.
And I finally, it was a struggle for me for a long time to like break away from that intense, passion or whatever for music, where it was like I didn't want to do anything else ever. It's like I neglected friends and I neglected family occasions, and because it was like I have this to do.
Sure.
And just that, and I'm sure a lot of it, missing performance, missing the volume of a performance, missing the, relationship with people at performances, getting positive feedback from people, it's, everyone has a craving for getting, kudos from people for stuff that they put a lot of work into.
Of course.
And that's, I'll be totally honest. It may not sound, DIY or cool or underground ethic. I made stuff because I wanted people to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to totally, sure, I made stuff for myself to listen to.
Sure.
That's why I did it. It's like, that's why Custodian sounded the way it sounded, is because I heard certain things and I said, well, this is great, but what if it did this?
Yeah.
Well, I'll do that.
Yeah.
When I first heard Killer Bug, I was like, these tones are killer, but if this had like some more, muscle and velocity in terms of rhythmic content, looping, crushing, so, but you put up something on Bandcamp or, Facebook when I was doing social media, and you post something and 70 people like your post. And it's a link to something that I put on SoundCloud. And then it's like, I see the analytics and 6 of you listen to it. And 4 of you only listen to the first 30 seconds. It's like, why do 70 people like this? Right. No one even listened to it. So you get to a point where it's like, well, I'm doing this for myself, obviously, but you want people to hear it. And when I felt, that you're just getting lost in the cesspool of everyone has 17 projects, you're like, why am I doing this? I could be spending my time doing something that I haven't done before. And then, I got, my dog and, my wife and my house, and it's like, dude, I'll piddle around with some music, some electronics, some whatever. Lately I've been having fun making like all sorts of different stuff, but I'm not gonna record it and put it out because I mean, maybe someone wants to hear it, but I don't want to put all the time into that aspect, and I hate social media. It's so toxic. And it's like, if I'm gonna be recording music, I'm gonna have to post it somewhere, and I don't want to be on social media. So that kind of takes that option off the table for me.
Well, I mean, okay, this is jumping already like to some questions I had at the end about like why you ended the project, but I think that's I understand what you're saying totally, but I also think like that's a big problem I think in general right now with music, is that a lot of consumption, but you start to wonder about how deeply people are really listening, and if they're listening at all, sometimes it seems like. But I think that's really also amplified even more so with the online music, like the links. Like I do still believe that like physical copies and physical media is like when people get a tape in their house, it might sit on the listen to pile for a month, but it'll get listened to eventually, and much more than something that is like posted on social media as a link just listen to, because that's so oversaturated, and it's a different believe it's a different experience. I still do believe that like I listen to stuff online now and then, and right now my receiver's broken, so like I'm only listening to stuff online, but it's totally different for me. And it's like you said, like it's really easy to put on something for 2 minutes and be like, this is cool, and then be like, what's the next thing, like, and like just like click to the next one,
Yeah, and I just pointed out my own hypocrisy in a way too, because I was just talking 5-10 minutes ago about Bandcamp. And it's like everyone's guilty of it, so I'm not pointing fingers or whatever, but one thing that struck me a week or two ago, I was listening to the podcast when you had Brad and Luke and Stefan on. I totally get what Brad was saying about like, I don't put stuff out because I'm so critical of it, and he works so hard at it. I don't know him, but I totally got a vibe from it where I'm like, I totally understand this, because I worked my fucking ass off when I was doing stuff. Like I refined and refined and refined and refined, and even when I wasn't putting things out, I was like, I'm obsessive like that. And that's how I was with my drumming too. It's like, even when I wasn't really, before I became known for, the bands that I was in, I wasn't going to social events or whatever. It was like I'd set my alarm by like, okay, well, it's Saturday. My folks are out of town. I can start playing at 10 o'clock legally, so no one can complain. And I'd like okay, well, I'm getting up at this time because I have this and this and this and that to do. And at 10 a.m., I'm sitting down at my drum set and I'm playing until like 7 or 8 tonight. I don't even care.
Yeah.
It's like I'll stop for lunch or something.
Yeah.
But like I obsess. And, you know, when I feel like things have become disposable, I can't justify the time that I would like to put into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do it anymore because, you know, I have other responsibilities in my life.
Yeah. And
I'm kind of like, well, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
And just life dictates that I really can't do something passively. And that's kind of goes back to the label.
Yeah.
And in the label as well, because it's like, I can't
just
do it as well as I want to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a respectable attitude though, for sure. And that's the difference between, you know, oftentimes a quality product and a mediocre product.
Sure.
What you said though about, you know, kind of making I'm not sure exactly how you put it. You said kind of you had a time where you kind of forced yourself away from like music, and what happened there? Why did that happen? Tell me about like why you made that call. And you quite missed it. You know, it was quite hard. It wasn't like you grew out of it and were like, okay, this is not, you know, interesting to me anymore. It sounds like you like went actually against like, you know, missing all this stuff and wanting to do it and cut it off.
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, it goes down to the amount of time I'm able to put into something now. Mm-hmm. But also just, I don't know if I ended up feeling, a lot of times I feel guilty, especially when I, you know, was in the like BRODEQUIN years, Phetopsy years. Mm-hmm. That's like all I gave a fuck about. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it would be like, you know, major events, you know, family stuff, like mm-hmm. my parents' 25th anniversary or something, let's just say. You know, it was like, no, I can't go. I'm in Tennessee. We're rehearsing today.
Yeah.
Like, that's a shit attitude. Mm. You know, I mean, sure, you know, it's great to be diehard and dedicated to stuff, but I think I ended up starting to feel like guilty for all the time I had put into my activities and not into anyone else's lives that were important to me in a way. Like, I mean, I'm sure someone's going to hear this in my family or whatever and be like, oh, that's kind of awful. You know, like, and it's not that I didn't give a shit, but I was so preoccupied, we'll say.
Sure. Well, I don't think it's, I don't think it's awful in the first place. I think the fact that you're reflecting on it like right now in this way is like definitely not awful. It shows that you're a very like considerate person, because I mean, that's what a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people are that way, and a lot of people never like really reflect on it and be like, you know, I want to change that. I think the fact that you changed that, I mean, I'm not saying I'm happy that you're like doing less music and noise. I mean, but I can definitely respect like that.
I'm vacuuming, not making music.
But I can definitely respect that, like, you know, reflection and you know, as a human, I think that's you know, a good thing ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I spent so much time on stuff that I feel like, oh, I never did this, or I never took the time to appreciate that. You know, I'm saying this and that is a very just, you know, I can't really think of an example off the top of my head, but you know, it's like I can't just satisfy myself my whole life in that way. I need to appreciate other things because I only am here once.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why now I don't really, I mean, I have in my room, I have a shelf, and I've, over the last year and a half, I've kind of went bonkers collecting, you know, little drum machines and little knick-knacky electronics, and, you know, and for me, just, you know, pulling out a random drum machine and just fucking around for a half hour, 45 minutes. It's just like, oh, this is fun. And it took me so long to just be able to have fun with music because, you know, let's be honest, with you know, the death metal stuff and the reception that I got with my bands and the reception that I got with Custodian, I crave that
reception,
feedback, and that reception, that enthusiasm from people about what I'm doing. And when I would do stuff and it wouldn't create enthusiasm, I'd be like, well, what the fuck am I doing wrong? So it took me a long time of being away from you. I mean, I still get in my moods where it's like I'll record something, and obviously I know myself at this point where I don't do anything with it. It's just like, to me, there's a lot of merit now, where before it was like I was creating for the purpose of pushing it out. And now I'm finally to the point where I'm satisfied with just the creation process. As it is by itself. It's like I go ahead.
Was it different then? Because, like, you know, I was going to ask, was Custodian in some way at all like therapeutic for you, or was it kind of like the opposite, like of, you know, kind of like the work was torturous, but it was kind of about the end product and the reception?
No, it was. I got a lot out of Custodian. You know, I think I did a podcast that was more, you know, for like death metal and drumming based a couple years ago, year and a half ago, something like that. And I even said on that podcast, I was like, you know, Custodian is like, that's my project. You know, I love the stuff that I did in metal, you know, but yeah, Custodian to me, that's like that was like, you know, the closest to my heart in terms of my creative output. I loved doing it, and all this stuff that I'm talking about, you know, spending time doing other things because I was too hyper intense about other shit, you know, music shit. That really didn't become a thought until like post that whole, you know, like ending the projects, ending the labels, ending the, you know, going to shows and shit all the time. Like that was kind of an afterthought of like, oh, well, this is what I've been missing. And even if it was just like, I'm just going to take a walk today. You know,
but what
I'm gonna go on a walk with my dog in the park. And then I go, God, why don't I do this every day? Oh, because I was too busy fucking doing, you know, hitting a piece of sheet metal in my basement or something. You know what I mean? Like,
but
so it became more prevalent. That kind of thought became more prevalent the more time I got away from it. But it was, like I said, I still have those days where I'm like, oh, I hate what an uncreative, lazy person I've become. You know, like I said that to my wife the other day. I texted her. I was like, God, because I came home and I had this, I was, you know, listening to YouTube all day at work. You know, I just bought a couple new pieces of gear. So I was like looking up different combinations of, this gear with that gear, you know, this drum machine with that synth or whatever. And I got all inspired. I was like, fuck, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have like MIDI cables, like covering my house. And I brought out this big table and I'm like pulling out all my gear and I'm like, fuck yeah. And then all of a sudden it just was like deflate. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. Why am I fucking doing this? This is so like, I don't remember if it was something I had the wrong cable or I didn't have the right cable. And it just like totally took the steam out of me. And then I got depressed that something that simple, like totally just took the wind out of my sails. Because I'd never used to give up like that.
You were super focused. I mean, that's clear. I mean, that was clear when I knew you at that time. Like you were just super focused on that shit. And
Yeah.
and obsessive. But you say this reflection came after kind of quitting these projects. It still sounds like there was some like what made you like kind of like just stop all these projects like kind of like pretty abruptly.
What made me? You broke up a little bit there. I didn't hear the full. No, you're fine.
What made you stop all these projects? At that time that you did. Despite your feelings of wanting to still like be involved.
Honestly, I've thought about this a lot. Honestly, I think a big part of it was my decision to not be on social media anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate to come back because it's such a like fucking topic of the time. You know what I mean? And it sounds so trite and stupid, but it's just like, I just fucking would go on Facebook or something and I would just be like, God, I hate people.
Mm.
And then when I got off of there, it was just like, okay, well now where do I promote my music?
Mm.
I can't because no one goes to Blogspot anymore.
Sure.
And even if I post something on my Blogspot, where am I going to tell anyone about it?
Right.
No one's looking at anything except 2 or 3 sources.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of like the start of the descent into doing nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's like I don't know. I mean, and that sounds and also like we talked about earlier. I had said that I'm like all or none person, and I get really intense for a while until I feel like I reach a point.
Yeah.
And I felt like I remember when I recorded the split 7-inch with Pustrator.
Mm-hmm.
I did my side for that. And before that, I think it was the split with Developer.
Mm-hmm.
When I recorded those two, I was like, I'm done.
Mm.
Like I got done with the track for the Phage 7-inch.
Yeah.
And I was just like, perfect. That's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah.
So that kind of hand in hand with, the desire to not be irritated every time I opened up my Facebook to promote something or send a message.
Mm-hmm.
I at that point I was just like, it's run its course.
Yeah.
I mean, where else do I go?
Sure.
Because I don't like, I wouldn't even call Custodian caught up. I mean, a lot of people would consider, but I never caught up in post.
No, I wouldn't.
And I think caught up, like, for example, I love Endo.
Mm-hmm.
I love Killer Bug,
but
at some point it gets too cut up for me, and it's just like it loses continuity.
Yeah.
Or because I still try to have, like, even as spastic as some Custodian stuff could get, I still tried to keep like a general mood or aesthetic to it. So it's like, well, I could go more spazzy,
right?
But I don't want to.
Yeah. And
I could go back. I mean, because the first few Custodians were a little more like atmospheric and spacious in terms of like, I actually used like reverb and there was like mood to it.
Yeah.
Whereas the other stuff, the mid to late was just like fucking, and I didn't really want to change the sound.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, I change what I'm doing or I don't do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can understand. And I think I think it's understandable that you just kind of felt like you had realized the sonic goals you had with the Custodian. And then that was like, over. Because you actually didn't just stop Custodian and like stop music altogether. You were actually doing a few other projects afterwards. I mean, you were doing you started doing more like drumming with the finger pads, and what was how do you pronounce the bass, like kind of like Godfleshy project you had?
Oh, Cathoga. Yeah, I was doing Cathoga, and I did Yurth.
Yes.
With Jim.
Yes.
And then I also I I did a few shows again with BRODEQUIN.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they accepted the finger drum thing, in which I was like, I'm still kind of impressed with those dudes. Like, those guys, they're smart dudes.
Yeah.
But most metal guys
are not
saying that they're metal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I got, it's funny because I got so much heat from people doing that shit with BRODEQUIN.
Yeah. And I saw the video.
And those dudes, Mike and Jamie, they were just like, yeah, it sounds killer. Let's do it. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, you feel okay with this?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's totally cool.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because a lot of people I found, for the, summer, half a year that we did that, I'd run into people in bands and they'd be like, holy, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But all the people that weren't in bands they thought it was the gayest, that's so fucking gay.
Yeah.
Where's your drummer? No drummer, no mosh pit. And I'm like, God, this is exactly why I fucking quit death metal to begin with.
Yeah.
Just dumb.
Yeah. I remember a couple years ago going in and finding those YouTube videos of you playing those sets, and you're fucking raging. And it's like the comments are totally divisive. The comments are totally split. It's either people are like, fuck yeah, like Engman's fucking killing it. That's so cool he's doing it. Other people are just like, what the fuck? Like, and I can imagine that was probably pretty discouraging, probably pretty much like frustrating.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, I came up with a whole new way to play drums.
Yeah.
I mean, all their dudes are doing that shit, but they're doing it in different styles.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for, a hip hop guy to punch in a drum beat on an MPC and actually play the thing and then just loop it.
Right.
Yeah, sure. But live performance, full tracks with I'm not triggering any patterns. I'm playing it as if I was a drummer.
Yeah.
Just on this thing.
Super fast technical blast beats.
And I worked really hard at it, and I was really obsessed with it, as you can assume.
I remember seeing you.
And I put so much time into it, and I was so proud of it because I was like, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
Because it was like exactly it's what I love.
Yeah.
It's drumming, it's extreme music of some sort, and it's electronics.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like when I started being able to pull stuff off, I was like, this is like the instrument that I was supposed to play. Like, I was born to play death metal on a stupid rubber pad. You know what I mean? And I took that really hard. I have to admit, that was like the first time, like for many years, I mean, there was a Fetopsy review in Metal Maniacs, and I was like, holy shit. Like, you can go to Pick and Save or whatever grocery store and buy an issue of Metal Maniacs.
Yeah.
And then we got reviewed in it. And we just got fucking shredded. And it was the funniest. No, the Fetopsy record.
Oh, okay.
And I thought it was the funniest thing. Like, I loved it. I was like, dude, this is so great. Biggest magazine we could ever possibly be in. And we just got fucking like eviscerated by the reviewer. I was like, this rules. Like this is Fetopsy aesthetic right here.
Yeah.
I was like, this is perfect, because if I read this review, like, sure, he's ripping on it, but the things he's saying about it, I would go buy this record based on, it's horrible. All it is blast beat and toilet vocals, and there's lyrics about tampons and fucking elderly women or something. And I was like, I love this.
Yeah.
So I loved that it was, anyway. But yeah, the finger drumming thing, my usual thick skin was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Because I worked really hard and I was really stoked and it sounded really good.
Yeah.
I was like, this is, wow. Like, BRODEQUIN live, like when I was drumming, it's like, we never sounded this tight and clean.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's separation and there's sound and you can hear the riffs. And it was like, it was that whole thing with like Godflesh. It's like heavy as shit, but there's clarity to it.
Yeah.
Coming soon on White Centipede Noise, Jason Krumer Ruth CD.
Okay, so we can't really talk about Custodian without talking about the Milwaukee noise scene and the Borg Ward.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the Borg Ward was a venue in Milwaukee that was like an all-ages DIY venue, and it was like the headquarters of a lot of really like intense noise activity in the whole Midwest. Like, we were coming to Milwaukee Noise Fest and just shows in Milwaukee pretty regularly from Minneapolis. Climax Denial was playing there regularly. You were, Anal Hearse, Bloody Minded would come quite often. People from Chicago, people from the surrounding area were really coming there. And it was ran by, I don't know exactly who ran it, but I know that it was kind of a collective. And Peter J. Woods and Jay Linsky were two people that were really, really, super instrumental in making things happen there.
Yeah.
What's the Borg Ward for you? What was that experience like, and how did you come across it? And tell a little bit about the role it played in the scene and in your activities, like maybe fueling your activities.
Well, it was, I was doing, noise recordings. It's, a few years before Custodian, official Custodian. Alex was active with Climax Denial. I don't know if he was under the Climax Denial name yet. And then you had Peter, and it was kind of splintered. Like, no one really knew of each other until kind of like Peter started doing Noise Fest. And he did Noise Fest, I think, either 1 or 2 years before it became like a Borg Ward thing. So really with Peter, and then, obviously Jay jumping in as well, and then Jay taking over for a while when Peter was, I don't know what Peter was doing, when moved out of state for a little bit or something, and then Jay took it over. I mean, that was just like, that was the place. Yeah. And it was, you hear about it in every scene. There's all these people doing the same thing, and it was, there's a bit of friendly competition, there was critique, there was positive, you know what I mean? And just the activity, you always had a show to play, and it was always, like you said, you guys were coming down a bunch from Minneapolis, people were coming up from Chicago. I mean, we even had, like Astro played at the Borg Ward, and it's like, holy shit, like, you know what I mean? So it was like, there was always something happening, and especially at that time, that time was crazy for the whole scene. That's when the I Heart Noise Forum was like in full swing, and it was like, that was like, I mean, there was just an abundance of activity, like on all fronts. And the Borg Ward was just like, I mean, I was at the Borg Ward, I don't even know how many days a month for shows. I mean, it was crazy. It was like something was always happening there. And it when you have an enthusiastic group of people and there's constant activity, obviously it's going to fuel you to, work harder and do more and produce better results. And I mean, it was so positive, really. And it was just fun. I mean, some of the most ridiculous fun moments I've ever had in my life were at, in the garage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Behind the Borg at, noise shows. Yeah. I mean, just the types of conversations and some of the things that happened there. Yeah. It's just like, I remember it very fondly. Yeah, definitely. It was very, very, very fun. But, overall, it was just the activity and just Peter worked his ass off to get that place. Like, he did such an amazing job with that. Absolutely. And it was so fun. It was, yeah. And, it was important. We met so many people. I mean, that's where we met you guys, really. Definitely. That's where I met you. I remember meeting you actually for the first time. Maybe the first Milwaukee Noise Fest I came to,
just kind of on a whim. I just came there with a friend. Like we drove there, and you were outside with like a Tupperware of like tapes and CDs and like gear too, and selling it for like super cheap. You had all this stuff, and like you wanted like max like $3 for like each tape and stuff like that. And and I bought stuff from you, and then everyone's like, "That's Custodian." Like I think that was like when you just like were. That was like maybe one of the first Custodian sets ever, and there was definitely like some hype in the air that you were about to play, and like it's like, "That's Custodian," and then you fucking played and fucking killed it.
I think that was, if I remember correctly, that was right around the time that my tape on Sex Crime Arts came out. I think that was the first day I had a copy of that.
Yeah, that could be.
So that would, so that's even before I was, using the refined setup and everything.
Yeah.
But but I mean, literally from that time until who knows when, this is where my memory gets fuzzy, but I mean, it was years and years of just fucking crazy amounts of shows and activities and
regular shows, regularly like really well attended shows. The Milwaukee Noise Fests were always really great.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people actually came to noise shows in Milwaukee for a while there.
Yeah.
It's like there's no reason that someone, that a weird little city like Milwaukee should have like 60 people at a noise show on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Like that's bizarre. Anywhere that's bizarre.
And I remember knowing like going there often enough where I knew like the whole like crew, there was a whole crew of like regulars, that were always there at every show, and they weren't necessarily musicians. There were a lot of just like fans. People would come to every night, and, just shoot the shit, and always great shows. Super loud PA. It was amazing. Do you think if a Borg ward like popped up near where you're living right now, do you think you'd get involved?
I don't know.
Like say
it's hard to say.
Say like Peter or someone was like starting to like put on heavy shows, like 10-minute drive, and like people were coming out, and like there was that activity. And you think in this point in your life that could still be like something you would?
Well, I don't know. I can't really. I can't really answer that in a way, because there are still. I mean, Peter still does shows here.
Right.
But they're, I moved. I mean, I'm not far from Milwaukee by any stretch.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things where it's like, do I really want to go to a show at 8:00 on a Tuesday night in Milwaukee? Because it's like a 40-minute drive, and that doesn't sound like much. It's like a 40-minute drive, and then I'll see the show, and then I'll go home, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not discrediting it by any stretch. Like, I think it's great that people are still doing stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like I'm lazy or uninterested or jaded or whatever. But I mean, there was something about the Borg ward and the attitude at the time that's like, it's so, I mean, maybe it's not different and I'm just different.
Yeah. I mean, those DIY kind of venues are really key. I mean, I think those like regular places where you can do stuff like that and you have this freedom to do whatever you want. I think they're really key for this kind of activity, and they're becoming less and less, few and far between. And, there's always the possibility to have a show at a bar or whatever, or a club, but it's always different. When you don't have this like regular place, it definitely doesn't bring the same like unity and
well, I can't remember the name of the place where Peter is mostly doing shows. From what I can remember, it's like one of those like workshop, like kind of collective places where you go and, what do they call those? I can't remember the name of the place, but there's a couple of them, but they're like, like, oh, we're giving a class on soldering and everyone's going to, you know what I mean? It's one of those like shared workspace type of places where you can go and, you know, do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it definitely doesn't have like I mean, as you know, that's much different than the chaos of the Borg Ward.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be something. And I know that there's a couple places in River West that have shows, but that's like, I don't want to go to River West at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. I get up at 4:30 to go to work.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You know,
it's understandable. Do you ever go out? I mean, are you ever in touch with like those dudes? Do you ever run into Alex or Peter?
No, I haven't. And it's not that I don't want to see them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the last time I saw anyone was I went to that spot that I was just talking about that Peter books at, and Pedestrian Deposit played.
Cool.
And I went to that, and that was cool.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, that was also like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We'll say.
Yeah.
But I haven't been out to anything since. You know, I'm just not. I'm not aware.
Sure. Yeah.
Unless I get a text from someone, which most people don't even bother because they know I'm not going to go.
Sure.
That just sounds like you know.
No, but everyone I talk to, like when I mention you, like any contacts, like that, especially that I was like, you know, in touch with you again and like interviewing you and so forth. Everyone's like, "Fuck, I haven't talked to Jon in ages." Like, give him my best, you know, like Sam Stockton, Pat Yankee. Alex Komet, you know, all those guys, like, they're all like, I mean, no one is like, everyone's got their own stuff going on. People, you know, drift apart. And so no one's like, what's up? Like, that's weird. But everyone's like, you know, always like has very positive, like fond memories of those times. And like, seems like everyone would like to have contact again.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if I were to, you know, see any of those dudes, it would be, you know, I don't have any, I'm not out of the loop because I don't want to see it. I love all those dudes.
Yeah.
You know, I was watching like I said, I was watching the podcast, you know, videos and, oh, Sam, holy shit, where's that beard, man?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, it was great seeing his face and hearing him talk and, you know, same thing with you know, I hadn't seen Luke in how long or Stefan and, you know, and I'm just like, holy shit. And, you know, it's actually, it's funny, you know, actually the one person that I do talk to quite a bit still is Jim.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I talk to Jim, you know, we text a few times a week. Usually it's about like pictures of our dogs or something.
Cool.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's really the only person that from the old guard, we'll say.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I would love to see those dudes, and it'd be fun. It's just
life changes and life, you know, progresses, and it doesn't always. Yeah. But that's just how it is. But how does it feel knowing that people like still talk about those sets that they saw you play back then with like, you know, total reverence?
It's awesome. I'm flattered, and I think I mean, how wouldn't that make you smile? You know what I mean? It's super cool. I'm happy that people remember it, and you know, but I remember everyone else's sets too. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
do you have interest in, like, I know reissues have become a big thing in the past few years. Would you have an interest in having your stuff reissued? Certain recordings?
Yeah, that's actually something that I've been going back and forth on. I actually do have a thumb drive with everything on it. And it's one of those things that it's like, it's been sitting, you know, on my shelf, like just the thumb drive, just sitting there. And I've been meaning to mail it to Jim. Yeah. For I don't know, about a year now since. Wow.
So he might be doing something with it?
Yeah.
He's talked to you about it?
Yeah, we've talked about it, and we've talked about grant mastering everything, and
Wow.
but yeah, it's everything and then some, and all the artwork that I could find, pictures that I could find.
Killer.
Yeah, it's literally everything I ever recorded, live sets.
Wow.
That I have audio from.
Great.
But I don't know. I don't know why I've paused on it. I really don't have any good reason besides maybe I think, oh God, that's going to be expensive because it's going to be like a few CDs.
No, dude, that's not your business to worry about. First of all, you're not the label.
I know.
Second of all, CDs these days are cheap as hell to make. So send it to Jim, please. Like tomorrow morning. Get it underway. Jim will take care of it.
Yeah, I'll ask him about it. I mean,
Cool.
I'm sure that could happen. I just feel, financially, it's like, dude, are you sure you want to do that? It's like fucking gonna be like man. 4 or 5. It's gonna be like 4 or 5 CDs worth of shit.
That's not true. That's not your worry.
Coming soon on White Centipede Noise, KM Töpfer, Retrace No Steps CD.
So probably because you've been watching the podcast that I like to ask people this question, but can you tell me your top 5 noise releases of all time? Like top 5 for you, or also, maybe like also really influential ones on your sound? It might be one and the same, but.
Well, we talked about Blood Force Trauma, Bled Out.
Mm-hmm.
Love that CD. In terms of like influential, maybe not my favorite.
Give me your favorite. Give me your favorites.
Well, can I just throw out like 5 to 10?
Yes.
That could be influential and or favorite.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so the Blunt Force Trauma, but I could also just say Jonathan Kennedy.
Sure.
Because I love The Urge Within, I love Dead World, I love Death Pile,
mm-hmm.
Angel of Decay. Something about his shit I like.
Mm-hmm.
Influential, maybe not my favorite release now, but like Sickness Report, Atrax Morgue.
Sure.
Really, like that Merzbow, Pulse Demon, and Masana, Innermind Mystique. Those were kind of like the trio on release, or the Japanese American Noise Treaty.
Yeah.
That whole kind of, we'll just say release.
Yeah. That was huge.
One guy that I think is just fucking phenomenal that I don't really hear anyone giving any sort of attention to is Gelsamina. Gelsamina is so fucking good, people.
Yeah.
I mean, that first CD on Freak Animal, I forget the title of something. It's been a long time since I've pulled out the actual Behemoth? Disc. What's that?
Is it Junkyard Behemoth?
No, it was like something about the disease. It was the very first Gelsamina on Freak Animal. I'd have to look at. I have become the disease that made me, or some. I can't remember the title. It's some weird long title.
That's a Sickness CD, I think. Title.
What is the name of that Gelsamina?
We can look it up real quick. I can look it up.
Yeah, please look it up because I'm clearly. It's something about disease. If I remember correctly, it's got the like surgical cover, like some weird
Disease with a Purpose.
Disease with a Purpose.
Yeah.
I always get those titles confused.
No, they're similar.
Yeah, that CD. Here I am talking about how great the CD is. I can't fucking remember the name. That sucks.
No, that's cool.
But yeah, Gelsomina in general, amazing.
It is true. That's an underrated project. I haven't really given it the attention that I should. I should check back into it. I mean, I was familiar with it. I was familiar with it, and I got pretty into Six Seed when he came out with that. But that's like a totally different
Six Seed,
totally different like approach. Like that's super like lo-fi and primitive, and just Gelsomina was like very hi-fi, very like sharp,
harsh as fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about onslaught. I mean that. Wow. I mean that's up there with like the roughest of rough.
Cool.
Obviously the Killer Bug, the Beyond the Valley of the Tapes. That was one of the first tapes I bought when I first got into, the Resound catalogs in like 95, 96. I got Vaginal Disco, like the original cassette. I wish I still had that.
Wow.
But, I got that and like Extreme Gospel Nights from Incapacitants and a couple other things, a couple 7-inches like that I can't recall, but those two were like part of the first stack of like really underground noise. Like I had another tape that I got at that same order was the original American Noise on Mother Savage. Cool. I had those, that cassette.
Yeah.
I think about all the cool stuff I used to have and I go, God. But anyway, off topic.
Have you sold a lot of your collection? Have you gotten rid of a lot of it?
Yeah, well, me and being minimal and efficient.
Yeah. That's right. I remember you took all of your CDs out of the cases and you had them like in a. Is that true? Am I remembering?
Yeah, I have all my CDs in those binders.
Yeah,
and then I have a box. I have a box, like 100-count CD box, and I have all the inserts. Yeah. And like filed alphabetically.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Because I moved so many times.
That's
I'm
right.
like, my CD collection is so stupid huge.
Yeah.
So I got sick of moving, 60 boxes of CDs. Now I just have to move like a dozen, notebook type of things.
Okay, so sorry.
No. What else? There's a lot of stuff that I really like.
Sorry, say it again.
Condom, Mike Dando.
Okay, yeah.
Like the Eighth Pillar, I love. Yes. I love the Grey Wolves. Condom, the Many Are Called but Few Get Up LP.
Yep.
Another project that I think was great was Crack Steel.
Mm-hmm.
He did that bitch Jap Run disc.
Yeah.
And that's really fucking good. And I have to tie in, like I mentioned the Japanese American Noise Treaty, or like the Aesthetics of Cruelty compilation, even some of the Cold Meat Industry stuff, not being harsh noise, but
sure.
I mean, a lot of that looping nature of like MZ412 or something, some of that stuff is very looped, and that influenced Custodian quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like some of the Marshall industrial stuff, with like the, kind of militant drum looping type of stuff. I don't know. I really, it's really hard to say 5, but okay. We'll go with, just for the sake of fun, we'll go with the Blunt Force Trauma.
Yep.
The Killer Bug Beyond the Valley of the Tapes.
Mm-hmm.
The first Gelsomina with the Sickness title.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know if that's the first Gelsomina. That's the first one I was aware of.
Sure.
Brighter Death Now, Inner War.
Cool. Yep.
Damn, throwing that last one in is so hard.
It's got to be.
Well, and now I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, shit, Death Squad.
Yeah.
Like Theological Genocide, or There was one grunt tape that I really loved too that I can't remember the title of. I don't know. It's one of those things, like, I've seen it in other podcasts that people are like, oh, 5?
Yeah.
And then they totally blank out.
Yeah.
Or they give you like 7. Or
give me one more. I think it's good. I think that's the point of the 5 is like you limit it, because you got to have that last 5th one be something like that counts, you know?
Wow. Masana ejaculation generator.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Good. That's 5.
Yeah. 5. That's 5 today.
That's 5 today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. That's like. Sure, there's things will come to you in your sleep tonight.
Yeah. We'll hang up off this call and be like, fuck, forgot this one.
People have asked me, oh shit, can I add something back in? Like they forgot to mention something important, but it's whatever.
Or the what's the incapacitants where they're in the coffee shop on the cover? I'm so bad with titles lately.
Is that As Loud as Possible?
Could be.
Like
insert any incapacitants record.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know how it goes.
For sure. And so since you said you check out a lot of stuff on Bandcamp, I think that's an interesting question I'll ask you is, tell me like some of the top 5 things you've checked out on Bandcamp in the past year that you're into, or online. It doesn't have to be the past year, but you know.
So
it can be 3 if it hasn't been really much. It can be 3.
Okay, so it's not going to be all noise. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah. Top 5 things you found on Bandcamp. Doesn't have to be noise.
Yeah, I'll just a couple things of interest. So, you know, I like the dungeon synth stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of it. Some of it's too, like, I don't like the neoclassical kind of like real orchestral.
Okay.
Or real like minstrel sounding type of shit. There's some stuff that's nastier that's like clearly recorded on really bad tapes, and but one really interesting project that I find interesting just because the musical ideas, the composition, and the tones that are used are so weird. There's a guy called Vormithadreth.
Okay.
And he's actually, I can't remember the black metal band, but he's in like a really prolific one-man black metal band that has like a ton of releases that like people really like. I can't remember the name of it.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, Vormithadreth is just, it's very awkward. It's like you hear it and you go, what the hell? But then it becomes addictive.
Cool.
One thing that I've heard just as of the last few weeks is, I think it's called, I'd have to look at the name, but it's that Japanese doom band. It's all female, the Gallhammer. Are you familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the drummer from Gallhammer has a project that I think is called Risipera.
Okay.
And it's really weird industrial noise, power electronics. It doesn't really fit into any category, but it has like elements of each of those.
Cool.
In terms of, you know, this is new to me because I'm like so out of the scene, but I loved, you know, obviously I'm friends with Jim, you know, Deterge. So I don't want to like come off as biased or partial, but I was stunned by that one for the Gipper tape that he did. That's just so good.
I haven't actually heard that.
Oh my dude, yes.
Yeah.
You need and then just, you know, like I said, a lot of the stuff that I listen to on Bandcamp, I mean, I have a wish list on Bandcamp that's, I don't even know how many records long.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff is just I'm not going to order it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it I'm so late on.
Sure.
But I have it in my wish list so I can remember to go back and listen to it and try to
right?
watch for a re-release of the cassette or something. So it gets kind of lost in the memory of,
Sure.
because I listen to, I check every day on there when I'm at work.
Yeah.
I go to my, my feed, where like this was suggested today in bestial black metal or whatever. And then you just go through and it's like whatever I'm into, I have everything in there from, like ZX Spectrum beeper 1-bit music to techno to bestial black metal to whatever.
Cool.
Chip tune this. I'm not like such a fucking strict butthole anymore about like I only listen to power electronics like how I used to be. Like I'm only listening to I listen to everything.
Sure.
Like ridiculous, stupid genres that people make up, I think. But yeah, and then there's like another band that I really like that I just heard recently is a Japanese like hardcore punk band called Milk.
Okay.
And it's like Dead Milkmen on crack.
Okay.
It's like super fast D beat, but there's absolutely no distortion on the guitar. It's like the jangliest, like most spastic sounding thing. Like I'm all over the map.
Cool.
With stuff. But yeah, good. Milk is awesome.
Milk is cool. Okay. Milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, man. That's awesome. That's a nice assortment out of the normal category.
Sorry for not having any.
That's fine. That's great. That's perfect.
No, but I think if anything was relatable to the content of the podcast, the drummer from Gallhammer, I think it's Rissapera. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, send me a link.
It's really good. And yeah, if you haven't checked out that Deterge one for the Gipper,
yes,
sure. that needs to be heard.
Okay.
Coming soon on White Centipede Noise, The New Boyfriends, the 4th season CD.
Cool, John. Well, I guess that's about it for my questions for now. Is there anything you'd like to tell the people before you sign off?
No, I would I guess I'm kind of surprised and happy that people still like custodian shit and people still talk about it. And in terms of, me kind of being unavailable to talk to, for all the people that I used to hang out with in the scene and shit, it's like, try to email me.
Yeah, you'll get a lot of email.
I'd love to hear from, we talked about Pat and, Luke and Sam and all those dudes from from that time, Grant. Yeah. I'm not away because I dislike everyone. I'm just away because just how life has went. But yeah, email me. I'd love to hear from people.
Great. You'll get a lot of contact from people. I know that. Yeah.
Good. I hope to hear from some people.
Cool. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was super fun. I hope I stayed on topic and didn't ramble too much.
Great. Talk to you later, man.
All right, man. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is made possible by viewer and listener support. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting it at patreon.com/whitecentipedeNoise.